the first four that you have on the wall.
Yeah.
I don't have that one, and I don't think I have any others.
Right.
If I do, I haven't found them yet. And the people have been sending their materials. I'm slogging through them.
Right. Well, I'm like I said, I'm trying to master this, and I'm a historian too. So I was one of the first guys who started the way back '77, the gathering to create archives, and at some point they just wanted Sea Org people to have to be in the archives, and then they kicked us out because they wanted to tech themselves and not be sharing it. We had to pay for it, or I don't know what the deal was, but without us first getting the first things to them and helping them create this padded room, soundless, so we can get everything in there. This was at the old original building. I was in that beginning of that project. Okay, but so I'm still doing it, and we have one of the most biggest library of the tech. Okay, I just want to say one more word about. Someone asked me during break. In fact. Yeah, I will get to the loyal officers. Someone asked me in break, what techniques do you use, Ray, on this theta clearing? And I keep saying, well, read the book, but there are some things that are used that are not used in any of these bridges, and it's all LRH. And some of the things you're working with is with, how many know here anything about quantum physics? Quantum physics. A few people. I'll tell you real fast. I mean, you guys, of course, heard the term quantum physics. I'm going to show you how ahead LRH was. I mean, they're just starting to talk about this. They're still in confusion about this. But LRH was way, way ahead of quantum physics because that's what you're dealing with in Technique 80. Yeah. I heard a tape the other day that, I don't know, I think it was on expanded Dianetics. How many people heard the expanded Dianetics tape? I don't know why he said that. He didn't know. He just, but he throws something out. He says something like, if you have a button on being looked at in the nude, you won't go exterior. So he's telling us this. Where did that come from? But it makes sense after you start looking at it, right? Right. So I'll put this in front of you next time. I'm not going to go there anymore. If you want, you can put one out. Yeah, you can do whatever you want. Let's go on. Why did Hubbard say that? Okay, wavelengths. Okay, I was going to talk about quantum physics. Show you how far Hubbard was. That was explained. Quantum physics was explained to me by a physicist, right? He was a PhD guy, right? And he said it's very simple. He said what happened was that they were trying to find the smallest particle in the universe. Was it a particle or was it a wavelength? And that's what Technique 80 deals with: particles and wavelengths, flows. I'm going, yeah, that's interesting. Tell me more. And he said, well, what happened was the U.S. this is about 15 years ago, did a test to try to find out the smallest particle in the universe was. And they came up with the wavelength. And announced it. It came out in the television, newspaper. And then in order to be valid, another group of scientists have to do the same test. And they had to come out with the same thing. See? So the Japan did the same test. And they came out with wavelength. So that's pretty good. French. You know the French. We got a French guy here. They did the test. Guess what they came out with? Particle. Well, across the aisle there, England, they said, all right, we got to do the test. What do you think they came out with? Particle. What is this? The same test, same way to do it, and that was the birth of quantum physics, because the physicists decided, well, whatever the test guys felt, this was the variable, that the people doing the test felt that it was a wavelength, and guess what it came out with? A wavelength.
Yeah.
People in France and England said it was a particle, and guess what they came out with? Particle. It's getting closer to LRH here, right? It's whatever you're putting out there is going to happen, is what LRH says.
What were the dates when LRH came out with his...
Oh, it was 52. It was, I think it's 52.
What was the date of these experiments?
90s, late 90s. So he was like quantum leap from these guys, right? Anyway, so you bring this down into processing. What does it have to do with you? What does it have to do with you and processing? Well, I started to look through the book, but I was sitting back there, and it has to do with wavelengths. And Hubbard says that effort, the wavelength of effort is really jaggy and really bad. And then emotion is not so jaggy, but it is jaggy. And then he has demonstrations on the book. Then he says reasoning is above emotion. So it's a little higher wavelength. And the highest wavelength is aesthetics. And he says if you pour aesthetics into an engram, or into a picture, or into some unwanted thing, one, it has to persist because you're admiring it. Two, it just blows apart. Now you know how some of those questions came about in your processing. It just falls apart. What he found out about a thetan, what a thetan does is like one of the two things a thetan is, or you can say, you can profile him, is that he's a conscious being and he could raise his consciousness or he could lower it. If you and I had a quart of whiskey, our consciousness is going to go down a little bit, right? Processing, of course, raises one's consciousness, right? So your consciousness go up and down. And so the implanters knew this, and they knew how to lower your consciousness with electronic means. See? One of the problems of the human race is they're in a state of amnesia. They don't know who they are, how they got here, let alone where they're going. There's only a few people that are out of the state of amnesia, who knows who they were, why they got here, and where they're going. I only ran into a few. I probably could count them in one hand. That's what you got to do. You got to keep doing this until you get there, I feel. By concentrating, all right, so as he says here, and I took this right out of the book, by concentrating a live energy flow upon a facsimile or ridge or pane or anything you direct it, the being disintegrates it, explodes or it implodes. This is right out of the book. This is what the processing does in Technique 80 and 88. And he also says that with this process, it's superior to even engram running or any other various text, date and locate, running things on the track, and so forth. How many people in here have ever heard the concept of floating engram?
Floating incident. Yeah, it's continuing in present time.
Yeah, it just floats in space. It's not connected to anything on the track. It's not connected to OT3. It's not connected to R6, anything else. It just floats with you in the time continuum of now. See? These are kind of the things that the Technique 80 and 88 handle. Things that are right there in your time with you. See? And it's fantastic when you take these apart. We also found like clusters of these implants, floating implants or engrams that might be floating there. And they need to be taken apart. You know, you just don't like look at it and it blows. Well, sometimes. But sometimes you got to look at it and then something underneath it is creating it or helping to create it, and you got to look at that. And that goes. And then you find the core of it. And that's what those set of questions I have do out of the books and tapes.